Hello and welcome to Kelly's Anesthesia Tips. I have been promising and promising new content and I keep putting it to the back burner, so I made it a goal to make sure that I put something useful up for those of you who have been waiting for some content and information. So one of the ones that really interests me is the diagnosis coding for labor and epidural patients who go from their normal delivery to a labor epidural. And I will tell you that I have been auditing for about 20 years. So if you are with one of those groups that I've been auditing for that long back, anytime I saw a diagnosis code for a labor epidural that did not match the encounter for the delivery. For example, if the patient had an epidural 01967 and then an add-on 01968, any coders who put the 01968 diagnosis on the 01967, I counted that wrong because we're telling a story here with our codes. And my explanation is that the story is not correct. When the patient came into the hospital, it was for delivery of a normal nature at that time. Now, little did they know they were going to go into the C-section, but because at the time the epidural was placed, it was a normal, I looked for that O80. After a number of years at some of the meetings that I speak at, I do a lot of the labor and delivery epidural stuff. I enjoy it. And one of the people that were in the audience had a different interpretation of what these rules were for coding. And there are some subjective things with coding and some things that are clear black and white, but I'll just bring to your attention. In fact, I had it on an audit not long ago where I went ahead and instead of counting it wrong, I counted it as a subjective coding difference. So let's hop over and let's look at my explanation, my crying baby, because sometimes it is clear and sometimes it's not so clear. So I say we need to make fair and informed decisions, and hence the stormy background with our pinks and blues for boys and girls. So here I checked my notes, and in this particular review, I didn't say you should report O80. I said that your code for the labor epidural does not match the reason why the epidural was placed. So we kind of did a little bit of back and forth, and this happened to be a California audit. So I went and looked for whatever I could find from California payers that were current at that time. And if you can kind of read my notes here, I'm saying virtually what I said, it should tell a story. And if you're doing it before any complications are known, it's fine to match that up. So I said, I understand your coder's hesitation to use based on the guidelines that they're interpreting. So I made some suggestions here that maybe you guys could chime in on the contents to see if this is something you're doing, something that you might look at this code and consider doing. But I'm still a believer of the O80 for the labor epidurals, and I'll just kind of give that side of my, let's just say, debate. So I don't want to call it an argument, just a debate. And on the debate, I will tell you this is my opinion. I mean, it's how I am interpreting the code. If it's a fact, I'll give you the link and that this is a fact. But for now, I'm saying that these are my opinions, and I'll show you why. So I gave some suggestions, and then I went directly to this California. Now, I'll tell you here that unfortunately, this was an audit that was performed last year, earlier in the year too. These links are no longer available, but at the time they were. What I try to do is keep a hard copy for my file so I know where I got the information from. So in this Taco Mac EDU, which tells me it's an educational facility, if the reason for the admission encounter was unrelated to the condition resulting in the C-section, the condition related to the reason for the admission encounter should be selected as the principal diagnosis. Now, to me, that's clearly stating that, yes, you can use the reason for placing the labor epidural, which was O80. Conversely, and I have actually reached out to California, AHIA, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. There was a policy that they had published in a July-August 2015 resource that said, we do not want you to report O80 for this. And the links were both no longer valid. So what I did is I chased it backwards. And when I say I chased it backwards, that means I go from here. Like I went to www.californiahia.org and then started searching from there to see if I could find any resources dating back to July, August 2015. When I cannot, then I'll show you what I'll do. I signed up using my identification so they know who I am, that I'm legitimately looking for a resource to be able to share. And here I say I'm working on YouTube education for coders from all states and want to be able to refer to this resource as an example if they'll still allow me to have that. So I sent that today. I've not yet heard back from them. That's not surprising, but just to tell you that I'm trying to see if I can get that resource, but it would only be helpful to California coders. And then I dug around a couple of other places, and I'll just show you. I'll copy and paste this one. We'll hop on over to my pages here. Sorry about that. Give me un momento. I do already have up, and I'll link these resources again, the CMS current guidelines and my interpretation of them, because similar to what the previous resource was that I shared, it says code O80 may be used if the patient had a complication at some point during the pregnancy. This is after, they're trying to deliver, but the complication is not present at the time of the admission for delivery. And that's why I kind of stick by my gun with the O80, but because there is some room for interpretation up in this first paragraph where it says, do not report O80 if there is any other code from chapter 15 to describe the current complication. So I understand it can be somewhat confusing. I've taken to coding these or accounting these as a subjective coding difference rather than an error. But if there's someone out there that is like really, really well versed in the epidural diagnosis coding, obstetric diagnosis coding, and you know that this is a legitimate use for that, reporting 080 with the labor epidural 01967, and then whatever the reason is for the C-section, fetal distress, prolonged labor, whatever that is, that belongs with the 01968 code if that occurs. Drop me a comment or a link to a resource, etc. Now let me come back up here and go to that link that I just had, which is the MVP Health. This was an older resource. It was April of 2014. If this is one of your carriers, I can blow this up a little bit too. And then I'm just going to do my little word search for 01968, or O80 actually is what I'm looking for. O80, and see what they have to say on this. So under their normal delivery code, it matches, well, with a slight typo, but we'll grant them that. It matches the guidelines from CMS that are our normal guidelines within our diagnosis coding book. Once again, it says code O80 may be used if the patient had a complication, etc., etc., etc. But the complication is not present at the time of admission for the delivery. And to me, that suits it just fine. It matches it just fine. Now, I have given you what my interpretation of these code guidelines say. I have heard the other arguments about, well, listen, it's not to be used if there's any other code that describes it, but it's another one to me of those finger point in two different ways. Do you, do you not? So our goal here is to make sure we don't assign an inaccurate or incorrect diagnosis code. So if it's fetal distress, you don't want to put fetal rapid heart rate or tachycardia or something like that. You want to put the distress code. If it's whatever the reason was, that's what we want to make sure we get correct, that we don't assign wrong codes to the patient. And that is our goal. Also, on that vein, I want to go back to these official guidelines, because as an auditor, if you do not have that single life birth as a secondary code on that primary, I don't mind one way or the other. Like I said, how you can tell if it doesn't work for you is if your claim doesn't get paid. And that's when you start tracking down, okay, what am I supposed to be doing differently here? A lot of times the anesthesia record doesn't even tell us whether the baby was delivered. Some do, some do not. I don't give credit for putting a single live birth if single live birth is not documented. So if you're adding that on just as a matter of that goes with this code, it's not correct. It's another instance of doing presumption or assumption coding, which we are not supposed to do. All right, so this was a little bit of a catch up on some of my list of things that I'm going to be getting to. I am still working with Dr. Donahue on the spank blocks. We've both, just like I said, our schedules have not meshed well lately. I am still working with Doris Branker. Same thing, our schedules are not meshing well lately. And we are going to get together and do something maybe live. We're not sure. We're still in the experimental phase. I also want to eventually get to a surprise billing. Hopefully you guys are already doing the things that you need to be doing effective January the 1st of 2022 for your uninsured patients, and maybe working with your hospitals, but that's a whole nother session. So for now, I leave you with your be kind to one another, generous with your knowledge. Thank you. And as I said, if you've already subscribed, you'll get notifications when these new videos come out. If you're not, just subscribe and then you'll get those. Also, if you'll just hit the like button. And a reminder, this is an OCR that will take you directly to my website. If it says that it's not a safe website, I get that a lot because of my filters and my spyware blocking stuff. I will tell you, if you're going to www.perfectofficesolutions with an S, it's a legitimate website. And thank you much. Don't forget, leave me a comment if you've got ideals or a disagreement or something that you want to share, because I'm pretty sure everybody can read these comments. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.